In the news tonight, Tkiyat Ali hands out food packages to over 100 underprivileged families in Liban as part of its mission to sustain citizens all year long through the provision for food for life. The United Nations mission in Iraq says 1,000 people died in sectarian violence in May and appeals to the warring sides to end what it described as intolerable bloodshed. And the Turkish Prime Minister calls for an end to 2 days of demonstrations over a development project in central Istanbul that widened into defiance against him and his party. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. Aqaba felt the effects of a 4.8 magnitude earthquake on the Richter scale earlier today, but luckily without reports of any casualties or damages. Director General of the Natural Resources Authority, Musa Zioud, said the epicenter was south of the Egyptian city of Suez, 140 kilometers from Aqaba at a depth of 10 kilometers. And charity begins at home. In its bid to fight and eradicate hunger in Jordan, Tkiyat Ali today organized a tour for journalists, supporters and sponsors of the organization of the banned district for a first-hand look at the distribution of food packages to needy families. In Mleh Association, 116 underprivileged families collected their monthly food packages comprising 22 basic food items. Tkiyat Ali, established by Her Royal Highness Princess Haya bint Al Hussein in 2003, is the first initiative of its kind in Jordan and the Arab world. Its mission is to feed and sustain underprivileged citizens all year long through the provision of food for life while guiding them towards long-term self-sustaining solutions for an empowered and dignified existence. To date, Tkiyat Ali supports 6,000 families and the target is to reach 8,200 by year's end. The 10th Conference on Arab Women Journalists under the title Arab Media and Democratic Transformation concluded in Petra today with the participation of professionals, females and males from Arab and neighboring countries. The meeting in Taibat Zaman aimed to promote the Red Rose ancient city and bring women journalists from across the Arab world together to deliberate how they can upgrade the profession to meet the needs of political transition in the Arab world. They also discussed pressures on women journalists in particular and how they are portrayed on Arab satellites. The meeting also aimed to issue a modern media strategy on the necessary changes in the media to accompany the Arab Spring, including the right to information. The 10th Arab Women Journalists opened on Thursday under the patronage of Her Royal Highness Princess Basma bint Talal. And over to the crisis in Syria, where Syrian troops and Hezbollah fighters continued besieging the border town of Qusayr amid a fierce fighting with the rebels. Amateur video uploaded to the internet showed what activists say is damage done to civilian homes in Qusayr by Syrian army shelling and rocketing. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said fighting took place inside Qusayr and in villages around it under the control of government forces. They said at least one person was killed during the fighting. The United Nations has warned all sides they could be held accountable for the suffering of civilians trapped there. A UN statement said Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is following with concern the battle for Qusayr and calls on both sides to allow civilians to escape the town, home to some 30,000 people. The 2-week battle for Qusayr is aimed at securing supply routes near the Syrian-Lebanese frontier. Both sides accuse the other of using the routes to bolster their forces inside Syria. Elsewhere, fighting is reported in Rastan, north of Homs. In Iraq, and the death toll in violence across the country during the month of May is reported at 1,000, making it the deadliest month since the country fell into sectarian violence 7 years ago. The United Nations mission to Iraq reported the toll and said the casualties were mostly civilians. The mission said nearly 2,000 people were killed in the last 2 months as Al-Qaeda and Islamist insurgents stepped up attacks. In a statement, the UN envoy in Baghdad, Martin Kobler, urged Iraqi political leaders to act immediately to stop what he called intolerable bloodshed. According to the UN, this week's multiple bombings, which battered Shiite and Sunni areas of the capital, Baghdad, killed nearly 100 people. And over to Turkey, and after 2 days of riots in Istanbul, Turkish Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan made a call for an end to demonstrations. In a televised speech, he said elections are held every 4 years when the nation makes its choice, and called on the people to express their opinions within the framework of law and democracy. Thousands of protesters clashed with riot police today in the fiercest anti-government demonstrations in years. Turkish police fired tear gas and water cannons for a second day to prevent the protesters from reaching Istanbul's central Taksim Square, while other demonstrators in Ankara marched towards parliament. The unrest, which resulted in at least 12 injuries, was triggered by government plans for a replica Ottoman-era barracks housing shops or apartments in Taksim Square. The demonstrations widened into a broader show of defiance against the prime minister, who still vowed to push ahead with the redevelopment of the city's central square. French far-right leader Marine Le Pen could face charges over remarks she made about Muslims after European lawmakers voted to strip her of parliamentary immunity. The French Justice Ministry asked the European Parliament last year to waive Le Pen's immunity over the comments made at a rally in 2010 before she took over leadership of the National Front Party. While party officials say efforts to strip her of the immunity are politically motivated, the European Legal Affairs Committee voted in favor of lifting the immunity this week, paving the way for a plenary vote later in the month. Le Pen had compared Muslims praying on the streets to Nazi occupation, saying it's an occupation of sections of neighborhoods in which religious law applies. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, a miraculous rescue of a Chinese baby from a sewage pipe brings him back alive to his mother, but with minor wounds. An Imperial Romanov cigarette case, which belonged to Russia's last Tsar, Nicholas II, will go under the hammer on Thursday the 5th at the British auction house Bonhams. The sale coincides with the 400th anniversary of the Romanov dynasty first coming to power, and the cigarette case is expected to fetch at least £200,000. A masterpiece from the Fabergé workshop, the case is decorated with purple enamel, gold plating and precious stones. Bonham says the piece is of significance not only for the quality of craftsmanship, it was a memorable gift to the Tsar by his wife, Empress Alexandra, on the birth of their second daughter in 1897. Another highlight of Bonham's forthcoming Russian sale is Madonna Laboresse by Nicholas Roerich, born in 1874. The auction house says the piece represents a major rediscovery of a masterpiece of great significance for Russian art and is expected to sell for up to £1.2 billion. And over to a miraculous rescue. Less than a week ago, a Chinese mother unexpectedly gave birth to a baby in a toilet, and when she tried to grab the newborn, his fluid-covered body was too slippery and subsequently slid into the sewage through the hole of the toilet. The little boy miraculously survived and only suffered some cuts to the face and limbs. It took firefighters and doctors 2 hours to use pliers and saws to rescue the infant from the U-shaped pipe in which he was stuck, and now they are recalling the rescue process. Here's the story.
Rescuers who freed a newborn baby from a sewage pipe in eastern China have been speaking about how they saved the child. State media says the infant was found trapped after the mother gave birth unexpectedly in a toilet.
We didn't dare cut the side that was close to the baby's face.
We had to cut the pipe carefully at the section where the baby's waist was, and then break apart the pipe.
Doctors say the boy was breathing slowly and was still attached to his umbilical cord. His mother had reportedly kept quiet during the rescue, fearing authorities would not let her keep the child. State media says the baby will be cared for by the family now he is out of hospital.
A star is born, and not just any star. Grumpy Cat, who won fame on the internet for her permanent scowl, will be getting Hollywood treatment in an upcoming film, will hit bookshelves with a new book, and even satisfy stomachs. At an appearance in New York City, fans lined up an hour in advance to ensure their meeting with Grumpy Cat. The cat, whose real name is Tartar Sauce, went viral last year after its owners posted a photo of it on a social news site. And shortly after the uploading, fans turned the once household pet into a household name. Photos of Grumpy Cat gained a following with ironic user-generated captions known as memes. Grumpy Cat will join the ranks of Hollywood's other four-legged furry A-listers, such as Uggy, the dog from Oscar-winning film The Artist, and Buddy, the basketball-playing golden retriever from Air Bud.
Anytime, Grumpy Cat.
Okay, let's try this again. Bring back the box.
Will she ever get off the...
Whoa, where'd she go?
Every time somebody at work shared a Grumpy Cat email, everybody laughed. It was one of those, contagious things. You're like, I know this is perfect for my friend who's having a bad day, and so it's a perfect book. And Grumpy Cat was only a one-liner. It's just, the meme over and over again. And so we got to dig in and really fill out the personality of Grumpy Cat and make it into activities for more grumpiness.
We begin with tennis on the French Open. Third seed Victoria Azarenka recovered from a set down to beat France's Alizé Cornet and reached the fourth round of the tournament. In the opening set, the French woman was rewarded for some impressive play. But in the decider, Azarenka was much the steadier, and the Belarusian clinched a 4-6, 6-3, 6-1 victory in the 2 hours and 22 minutes to advance. Meanwhile, Kei Nishikori became the first Japanese man to reach the last 16 of the French Open in 75 years after beating Benoit Paire of France in the third round. Nishikori crushed his opponent 6-3, 6-7, 6-4, 6-1. Dani Pedrosa ended a dramatic Italian MotoGP qualifying session by taking pole position for tomorrow's race at Mugello. The Spanish Honda rider set a time of 1 minute, 47.157 seconds, beating compatriot Yamaha rider Jorge Lorenzo, who finished second. Italy's Andrea Dovizioso was third fastest. Pedrosa said his fast time had given him confidence ahead of tomorrow's race, which covers 23 laps. And finally, for a quick look at the weather, mild weather continues tonight in hilly areas, but relatively hot in the Jordan Valley and the Gulf of Aqaba. Tomorrow, relatively hot weather conditions prevail in most regions as temperatures rise to about 6 degrees above their seasonal average. Winds will be northwesterly, moderate to fresh, blowing dust in desert areas. And in the Gulf of Aqaba, very hot conditions tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. Kiyat Ali hands out food packages to over 100 underprivileged families in Liban as part of its mission to sustain citizens all year long through the provision of food for life. The United Nations mission in Iraq says 1,000 people died in sectarian violence in May and appeals to the warring sides to end what it described as intolerable bloodshed. And the Turkish Prime Minister calls for an end to 2 days of demonstrations over a development project in central Istanbul that widened into defiance against him and his party. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.